Hello, and welcome back to Monetize Me. My name is Jay, and today I'm going to be going over a hot topic amongst most young graduates. And whether that's graduating high school or graduating college, one of the top questions on their minds when they start that first full-time job is, what should I be doing with my money? What can I be doing now to set myself up for financial success? So today I'm going to be going over 5 key steps that you can start taking once you start that first full-time job. Step 1, get rid of all bad debt. Step 2, establish an emergency fund. Step 3, you want to start investing for retirement. Step 4, you want to start saving up for a down payment on a house. And lastly, step 5, you want to diversify. First off, you want to get rid of all bad debt that you have. I personally consider any debt with an interest rate above 5% to be bad debt. And this is debt that can rat away at your wealth if you're not careful. I know that some people are going to disagree with this because they think that putting extra money onto debt is a poor decision when you could be investing that in the market and getting better returns. However, I have 2 big arguments against this. 1, this is really only true if all of your extra money is going towards debt and/or investments. So if you're going to be using this argument to keep the debt around longer, be honest with yourself. Is all of that extra money going towards investments? Or is some of it actually going towards cars, gadgets, eating out at restaurants, and going out to bars on the weekends? Second, any gains you make investing in the market are taxable gains, versus debt, if you think about it, is technically tax-free, because the gain in this scenario is an interest rate on a loan and not actual capital gains. So, in order to beat the interest rate in the market, you really need to be seeing gains that are a bit higher than the interest you have on your debt. Unless, of course, you're investing in a tax-incentivized account like a 401k or an IRA, but more on that in a second. If the interest rate is up in the range of 7, 8% or even higher, even savvy investors might find it extremely difficult to keep up with that rate of return year over year. As the market goes up and down, that number becomes harder and harder to hit. That being said, the one condition I would be okay with would be if you're currently not making any investments outside of your debt, but would like to contribute to a Roth IRA. As the gains in this account will be tax-free, and there's a limit to the amount you're allowed to contribute, I would be okay setting aside money every year to fill this up, even if you haven't paid off all your debts yet. Though for any debt with a super high interest rate, I'd much rather focus on knocking out that debt before I even think about doing any investing. So if you have any credit card debt or high interest rate loans, you might want to consider taking care of that before you look to invest. So, you got rid of all of your bad debt, now what? Well, the second step will be focusing on building up an emergency fund. Now, whether this comes before or after getting rid of all of your debt will be up to you, but I would highly recommend having at least a partial emergency fund in place before you start tackling any debt. And by that, I mean before putting extra money above the minimums, not the minimum payments themselves. You want to avoid not paying minimum payments at all costs. Now, I say this because there are always going to be things that come up and get in the way of your financial plan regardless of how prepared you are. An emergency fund can help you take these problems in stride without sidelining your financial goals anytime something comes up. And yes, there are going to be emergencies that are too big to handle regardless of having an emergency fund. However, I think this more emphasizes the importance of having proper insurance and healthy living than it does diminish the value of having an emergency fund in place. I won't go into all the details here, so if you haven't already, feel free to check out my other video on emergency funds that goes more into depth on what an emergency fund is and why you need to have one. Now, before I go into the next step, if you find yourself struggling to get past this point, whether it be because of consumer debt, maybe student loans, or having a lower income, I would highly recommend looking to qualify yourself and go find another job that's going to pay better, or going to find a second or third job to bring in more money to speed up the process. I would also strongly urge you to cut back on any unnecessary expenses. This includes going out for drinks on the weekend, or going out to eat at restaurants, or splurging on things because it's a holiday, or it's a special occasion. It is literally always a holiday nowadays, and this consumer mentality of always having an excuse to buy things is what's keeping most people from building wealth. You need to learn to tell yourself no. Now, I'm not saying that you have to cut them out entirely, but they do need to be budgeted and accounted for. You need to know and limit how much you're spending in these areas. That way you can ensure that you have money left over to put towards your debt. Now, thirdly, once you've gotten rid of all that bad debt, as well as established an emergency fund, it's time to start investing for retirement. Now, before just aimlessly investing, you should set a personal goal for yourself. A number that once you hit it, you would consider yourself to be financially independent. And luckily for you, I have a video on this as well. In this video, I go over how to calculate exactly how much you need in order to be financially independent, as well as how to work backwards to figure out how much you should be saving in order to hit that number by retirement. It's a fairly extreme example with extremely conservative rates of return to prove a point. So here, I'll use a bit more of a realistic example. So let's go with a 25-year-old that wants to retire by the age of 65. And when they retire, they want to be able to take out $6,500 every single month. We'll also assume that they're getting an 8% rate of return on their money, as well as a 2% inflation, because $6,500 now is worth more than $6,500 40 years from now. If they're going to be living off this money for the next 35 to 40 years after they retire, then they're going to need $1,180,000 in order to last them through retirement. You definitely want to be overly conservative when calculating a set amount that you're going to retire on. The last thing you want to do is get to the end of retirement and run out of money with little or no ability to go get a job. Now, if we assume the same rate of return in inflation as we did before, while they're saving up this money for retirement, then that means they need to be saving $650 every single month for the next 40 years in order to get to that point. Now, if you're able to get a 10% rate of return on your money versus 8% before inflation, then this number drops to less than $500 a month, which is the current contribution cap for a Roth IRA. So where do you actually put this money that you're trying to invest? Well, like I said before, a Roth IRA is probably going to be your best bet when you're starting out. I will note though that there is a modified adjusted gross income limit on a Roth IRA. So if you're above this limit, you're going to have to use a backdoor method in order to get your money into this account. This is why I highly recommend you talk to a financial advisor before you start doing anything. As of 2021, the Roth IRA contribution limit is $6,000. That means you can put $6,000 into this account every single year, and any gains on investments in this account are tax-free. Now, this contribution limit does go up to $7,000 if you're playing catch-up, which means you're older than the age of 50. As for what specifically to invest in, there are tons of options out there, and you should definitely consult with a financial advisor before making any decisions. I personally invest in a lot of mutual funds. I have a healthy mix of growth and income, international, and aggressive growth mutual funds, as well as some money in a target date fund. All a target fund is a fund that invests based on a specific retirement date. For example, the Vanguard Target Retirement 2060 Fund is going to invest for people that plan on retiring in the year 2060. So early on, it's going to be super aggressive when it's investing because it wants as much growth as possible, and as the retirement date gets closer and closer, it wants to be more conservative so as not to lose all the growth it's had. When selecting a mutual fund, the key things you want to consider are how strong the returns are, as well as how consistent they've been over the years. You want to be investing in mutual funds that have a super strong track record, as well as good returns. Secondary things to consider might be the expense ratio, which is how much it's going to cost you to have your money in the fund, as well as an investment minimum, if there is one, which is how much money you need to have invested in the fund. So, now that your retirement is in motion, we want to focus on two key things. One, increasing the amount you're contributing towards retirement, and two, saving up for a down payment on a house. When you do go to buy a home, it's usually a good idea to have as close to a 20% down payment as you can in order to ensure the lowest possible interest rate. So if you plan on purchasing a home in the next 3 to 5 years, then you might want to start setting aside money now in order to afford that down payment. Now, if you do want to invest that money while you're growing it, you can put it in CDs or a money market account or even in a high yield savings account, but nothing that's too risky. The other thing to keep in mind is that you don't want all of your money going towards a mortgage payment. So don't buy a house that's way out of your price range. The goal is to have a house with a mortgage payment that is substantially less than what you would be paying in rent. This way, once you've settled into your new home, you could take that extra money that you're now saving on rent and put it towards investments. Now, if you're not planning on buying a house in the next 3 to 5 years, maybe you move around a lot, or maybe you're just not ready to settle into one location yet, now you might want to focus on putting more money towards your retirement. This means working on trying to max out your Roth IRA contributions and then putting more and more money into your 401k. If your employer has a 401k, then you can contribute up to $19,500 to your 401k every single year. So it's going to take quite a bit to hit this limit, especially after filling up your Roth IRA. Now, if you're self-employed and you have a solo 401k, then your contribution limit is going to be much higher than that. Now, if you have a Roth 401k option available, this will allow you to put after-tax dollars into your account and thus not be taxed on all the gains when you get into retirement. But if you only have a traditional 401k available, that is fine as well. The difference between Roth and traditional is that Roth contributions are after-tax dollars that grow tax-free and aren't taxed when you go to withdraw them in retirement, versus traditional are pre-tax dollars that are put into your account, they grow, and then in retirement, when you withdraw that money, it is then taxed. Roth contributions are more efficient if you're in a lower tax bracket now than you are going to be in retirement, and traditional contributions are going to be more efficient if you're in a higher tax bracket now than you plan on being in retirement. The dirty little secret is that even though both of these options are tax incentivized, if you're maxing out your 401k every single year, then by contributing with Roth contributions, you're technically able to save more than you would if you were using traditional contributions. The reason being, maxing out a 401k with Roth contributions invests $19,500 after taxes, versus maxing out a 401k with traditional contributions is putting $19,500 in before taxes are taken out. So if you're investing $19,500 after taxes, that's really the same thing as investing $26,000 before taxes. And saving $19,500 before taxes is the same as saving $14,625 after taxes. The tax bracket when you retire would have to be quite a bit lower than the tax bracket you're in now in order for traditional contributions to make sense. I'll go more into depth on this in another video because I think this topic is extremely important for people to understand before they start investing for retirement. Now, you don't want to put all of your eggs into one basket. Before this step, you just started to enter the world of investing, and you started to grow your wealth. You did so by prioritizing either saving up for a down payment on a house or contributing more towards your retirement, and hopefully a little bit of both. Hopefully, if you were more focused on saving up for a down payment on a house, you were still contributing a little bit towards your retirement. And if you were more focused on contributing towards retirement, you were still putting a little bit of money away to save up for a down payment on a house. Now it's time to hit the other side of things. If before you had prioritized saving up for a down payment on a house, then now it's time to start focusing on contributing more towards retirement, and vice versa. Both of these contribute greatly to your life in retirement. Having a paid-for house frees up what's usually one of your biggest expenses, that being either rent or your mortgage payment. A lot of money goes out the door every single month if you have either of these two expenses. On the other hand, the more money you have racked up in your retirement accounts, the more money you're going to have to live off of and enjoy when you're in retirement. It's amazing the life you can live when you have a passive $6,000 coming in every single month at your disposal and little to no living expenses. This is what makes all the blood, sweat, and tears worth it in the end. So you've got your home, hopefully locked in at a low interest rate, and you're heavily contributing towards your retirement, if not maxing out your retirement contributions. So now what? Well, first off, congratulations. Wealth is now inevitable by simply doing what you're currently doing. If you change nothing, and you're not already, you'll be a millionaire within the next 10 to 15 years, depending on how much you have saved up so far. Now, if you have extra money coming in that's not going towards the retirement contributions and not going towards the mortgage payments, then other options start to arise. And to me, there are really three main non-exclusive options available. One, you can spend that money. Two, you can give that money. And three, you can invest that money. You can spend it on vacations. Go buy yourself a nice sports car, go buy jewelry, you name it. You can go give it to charity or other organizations. Or you can take that money and invest it. Maybe work on paying off your house early. Or maybe growing that money outside of your retirement funds and work on retiring early. You can start to get into real estate. You can purchase rental properties. You can start a side hustle or start another business or even open a franchise. Or invest that money in the market in a brokerage account. If you do plan on trying to retire early, just know that you won't be able to touch the money that's in your retirement accounts until you reach the age of 59 and a half, or at least that's the age limit in 2021. So, if you're in this position, you can take that extra money and you can put it in a brokerage account to invest, or maybe save up and buy rental properties, and start to try to grow your money outside of your retirement accounts. You can do with this money as you see fit. And when you do reach that amount that you're comfortable living off of until you reach the age of 59 and a half, you can retire early. And step 6, retire. If you've made it past these 5 steps, you have no debt, you have a fully funded emergency fund, you have a paid-for house, and you've maxed out your retirement contributions and are well on your way to incredible amounts of wealth in your lifetime. Now, if you're not quite up to that prized $1 million net worth at this point, it's only a matter of time. At this point, if you have enough money in your retirement accounts to retire, feel free to dial back those contributions a bit if you need in order to work on retiring early. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you're no longer worried about your financial future. You've already secured your retirement. You are financially independent. So what you do with your money at this point is entirely up to you. You can take that money and invest it, whether it be in real estate, starting your own business, or in the market, or you could just spend it. Been stuck at a job you hate in order to get to this point? Quit. Been wanting to go on that dream vacation? Good, go do it. Every dime you make at this point goes wherever you want it to go. Want to retire early? Cool. Save up enough until you're comfortable living off of that money until you reach the age of 59 and a half, and then retire. Money doesn't buy happiness by any means. And I'm not saying that it does, but it does buy you options. It buys you freedom. It buys you flexibility. It buys you time to go do more of what it is that does make you happy without worrying about finances. And that time, that one resource that you can't actually go make or grow, that time that you now have back in your life, that's priceless. And that, my friends, is exactly what you should be doing with your money while you're young. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you all. Best of luck and have a good one.